Welcome everybody once again to a Safe Place podcast, and today we're going to talk about suicide. Last year in England and Wales, 5,691 people took their own lives. 3/4 of them were men. It's the highest male suicide rate since the year 2000 and the highest female rate since 2004. Now, it's quite obvious to see, isn't it, that this is a pandemic that's going on in of its own right. That people are killing themselves more than ever now. So we need to really understand and look at what suicide is. Ultimately, it comes down to a set of environmental circumstances that suddenly change, and as a result, it throws somebody into catastrophic emotional disharmony, ultimately. Obviously with the lockdown, people not working, people losing their jobs, people feeling there's no meaning and purpose anymore. There's going to be diabolical emotions going on inside of the body. And ultimately, people aren't killing themselves because circumstances have changed. People aren't killing themselves because their environments have changed. People aren't killing themselves because they've lost their job or they have no money. People aren't killing themselves because they're addicts. People are killing themselves because they can't feel the depth of how uncomfortable those situations make them feel. Really try and get an understanding of that if you can. That it's irrelevant in a sense what's going on outside of us in the world or how that world is affecting us. What's really happening is that creates inside of somebody the most awful emotions. And those emotions are that deeply uncomfortable. Suicide seems like the only option for people. Now more than ever, we need to begin to understand how that works inside of the body and mind, and ultimately see how normal it is. And it may shock you to hear somebody, as myself, a qualified psychotherapeutic counsellor, talking about how normal suicide is. But it is. If it wasn't normal, it wouldn't occur. And I'm not being insensitive here. I did lose my father to suicide. He suffered with anxiety all of his life. And in the end, he drank alcohol to alleviate the symptoms of anxiety. In other words, he drank alcohol because when he did, the anxiety felt less uncomfortable. He was escaping a feeling inside of his body through the alcohol. The problem is, as the tolerance built up inside of his body to the alcohol, he needed to drink more and more to try and escape that anxiety, until in the end he was stuck in such a difficult cycle of addiction and avoidance of anxiety. It became that painful to him. The only option that my dad could perceive, which would feel better, is to actually end his life. So we understand that there are loads of different situations that can occur in somebody's life that can make them feel this awful. It could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be PTSD, it could be the loss of a job, the loss of a loved one. So many different factors and variables go into it. But ultimately, when we simplify it right down, there is only one variable that causes suicide. And it's the inability to feel and process the pain that we feel, the emptiness that we feel, the loneliness that we feel, the depression that we feel, the anxiety that we feel as a result of the world happening. So, how do we begin to help people that feel suicidal right now? Well, firstly, we let them know that it's okay to have suicidal thoughts. The mind is a powerful tool. It can be our best friend and the worstest of enemies if we don't understand it. The mind is an image-making machine. It's a tool. The incredible thing is that these emotions that we have, they're untangible. We can't weigh them on a set of scales, which means it's hard to understand exactly what they are. But all we know is that subjectively they feel awful when they're at their worst. Now, what the mind does, which is a good friend, even in the most diabolical of circumstances of having suicidal thoughts, is that if your sense of reality, your sense of you feels that painful, that out of control, that depressed, that anxious, if you feel those heavy, intangible emotions, the mind will create potential pathways to see a way of getting out of feeling that way. And at the worst, with how you feel, the mind will create images or fantasies or projected futuristic situations of how you're going to kill yourself. That is normal. That is okay. It's actually, when you understand it, not something to be feared. We can even be grateful for our mind giving us suicidal feelings, because it's trying to help us find a way out of feeling as awful as we feel. For family members now that are going through life suffering with suicidal thoughts, I want to let you know that it's okay for you to have those thoughts, that it's understandable why you're having those thoughts, that it's normal that you're having those thoughts. So, somebody that's feeling suicidal right now, how many things have you tried? How many different paths have you tried to find a way of not feeling suicidal? I guarantee that the normal paths, when we're not getting the right help, is to drink, is to try and think positive, it's to try and lose or disassociate ourselves from those suicidal thoughts. But actually, you trying to not have the suicidal thoughts will create the suicidal thoughts to grow, in a sense, because you're trying to run from an uncomfortable feeling again. And we've got a journey towards what's uncomfortable, with the idea that my body feels as uncomfortable as it feels, and my mind is projecting thoughts of suicide. And that's okay, I get it. I get it, my body's making me feel that awful, so something can change in my life. I can get a sense of control, I can lose my sense of anxiety, I can escape my depression. So I'm grateful for the feelings of discomfort. It feels really bad, it feels really uncomfortable, but I understand that my body's making me feel this way, so something changes. Now, if I'm feeling this way and trying to avoid feeling this way, and I'm finding it through alcohol, through television, through video games, through distraction, I'm not dealing with the feelings. And if my mind is creating all these awful thoughts of hanging yourself, cutting your wrists, taking loads of tablets, I want you to be grateful that your actual mind is trying to find ways out of you feeling as awful as you do. I want you to lose the old stigma that suicide is wrong, that suicidal thoughts means there's something wrong with you, and I want you to replace it with the idea that suicide is normal, and that suicidal thoughts are a perfect neurological mechanism that take place in the human brain that tries to help you find ways out of how you feel. And I want you to understand that the ways in which you've tried to avoid feeling the discomfort actually creates more of the discomfort. Like my father, who drank more alcohol to avoid the anxiety, created even more anxiety in the end, until the point he had to kill himself. So we need to try again. We need to look really deeply within ourselves and look for the support around us that we absolutely need, because at the moment, inside of your mind is a set of tools that you have learned across your life to survive. The problem is now you're in brand new territory. You've probably never experienced suicidal thoughts before. Have you got the tools to deal with that? Have you got the tools to survive that difficult terrain of having suicidal thoughts and really uncomfortable feelings? I would say you absolutely do not have the tools. There are charities like the Samaritans, there are counsellors, there are psychotherapists, there are people that have been through what you're going through right now, that have collected those tools, and they've learnt how to adapt and master those uncomfortable feelings and those uncomfortable thoughts, and they have transcended and gone beyond those suicidal feelings. Those are the things that you need to be looking towards to overcome the feelings of suicide. And you have to do this. I do not want to alarm you, but if you do not seek the right support for this situation, for these set of emotions that you're going through, the chances of you killing yourself are high. You have to seek help and support. My father, he sought a psychiatrist about 10 years before he killed himself. And in the end, he didn't bother with any therapists. He decided his therapist was going to be alcohol. And unfortunately, that was the wrong help. You need to turn away from alcohol. Now, how are you going to turn away from alcohol? How are you going to turn away from drugs? How are you going to turn away from distractions? You don't have to at the start. Just make sure that you're doing something different. Make sure that you're looking for help and support. You can carry on with all of those distractions. I'm not telling you to abstain from them primarily immediately. I'm just saying, if you're going to do those things, at least make one option, one behaviour, the pursuit of looking for somebody to support you through this and letting you know that what you're going through is normal. It's okay. It's a part of your mind and body trying to alleviate a sense of suffering. So of course the byproduct of discomfort is to find pleasure. That's where addiction starts. There's nothing wrong with you. You need to learn and understand so much more about yourself so you can collect the tools needed to survive this difficulty in your life. You've got to keep trying. You've got to keep searching. The beautiful thing is, counsellors and therapists are no different from plumbers or electricians. You get really good ones and you get really bad ones. So if you've had an experience of looking for support through a therapist and you didn't feel that relationship was good enough to create that healing effect that you was looking for, don't worry. Try again. Find another therapist. Eventually you'll come across a therapist that you'll build such a beautiful therapeutic relationship with that you'll be able to heal, that you'll be able to understand these difficult emotions, that you'll be able to understand them enough to the point where you can take different actions and behaviours to overcome these suicidal thoughts and feelings. So, whatever you've tried in the past that hasn't worked, you need to try it again. How many experiences have you had in your life where you tried many different things and mostly at the start, none of them ever worked? When you learnt to ride a bike, you kept falling off. When you started a new job, you kept making loads of mistakes. If you follow the same process, overcoming suicidal thoughts and feelings at first is going to be just as successful as falling off that bike or making mistakes in that job. Are we going to make one mistake with overcoming suicidal thoughts and feelings by, i.e. not having a relationship with a therapist and then realising that therapy isn't going to work for you and give up? Or are we going to follow that process of falling off the bike and realising as children we got back on that bike and we learnt to ride it? That I had to pay those bills, so even though I've made those mistakes in the job and I felt insignificant and I felt like a failure, I had to keep plugging away at it until I found success, until those processes became learnt and I actually became good at my job. Finding the right therapists, finding the right support, finding the right people that have been through suicidal feelings and thoughts and transcended them, they're your way out of this. They are your way out of this. Not the television, not the computer games, not the drink, not the drugs. I can't stress this enough to you. If my father would have had the right support around him, not through family and friends, not even through therapists, but the right information. If he could have took on board the right information, my dad would still be alive now. But unfortunately, he had friends and family around him that didn't know how to really help him. Would try and be there for him, would try and support him, would try and point him in the right directions. But he would avoid getting the right help because the right help meant he had to deal with the feelings of anxiety. And it was actually the opposite of what he, within his human nature, that he wanted to do, because none of us want to feel discomfort. It's incredible when you look at the animal kingdom, you look at bacteria, you look at human beings. Every single organism on this planet is unconsciously moving from discomfort to comfort. We're always looking for pleasure. So to tell somebody that's feeling suicidal, that's thinking suicide, or that, hold on a minute, you're going to have to really deal with this and face it. What are the chances that somebody really wants to do that? Low. Because it means sitting down and talking about these difficult feelings. It means actually acknowledging that they're going on within you, that you have no power over them at the minute, that they control you, that you feel out of control and vulnerable with it. All difficult feelings. Why do we want to go towards that? Well, I urge you that it is so important for you to do so. Because if you don't, the chances are that discomfort will lead you to taking drastic measures to avoid feeling that way, which is suicide. You don't want that. The part of you that wants to escape pain and suffering absolutely does. But there's a deeper part of you that doesn't want that. Your family doesn't want that. I mean, even thinking about the pressures of family, the idea of having these suicidal thoughts and feelings, we don't want to tell anyone about them. We don't want to scare anyone. We don't want to upset our families. And not only that, with this sense of deep fear that we have, and this anxiety and this depression that we have, the idea of telling somebody they love that we feel this way and seeing that fear inside of them evokes more fear in us, makes us feel even more wrong, makes us feel even more abnormal. So again, we're trying to avoid difficult feelings. If I don't tell anybody, if I keep this to myself, people won't react badly, and as a result of that, I won't feel actually even worse about myself. It's time to do the opposite of what we've unconsciously done most of our lives, and it's time to go towards discomfort. It's time to get the right support. It's no wonder why suicide is at the highest level since it's ever been. How many children in school are taught about their minds? You're taught about the body, you're taught about geography, you're taught about history, you're taught about art and English. How often did you ever get a teacher that sat you down and says, how are you feeling? How are you thinking? How are you behaving? I want the best for you, son. And the way I'm going to do that is teach you about your thoughts, feelings, emotions, behaviours, and actually help you navigate yourself through life so you can avoid as much suffering as you deserve to. You never had that. You never had a teacher that was educated in psychology. And unfortunately, the byproduct of that is you go into the outside world when you leave school and you're hit with 1,000 different responsibilities, family, money, jobs, bills. And you have to live up to be a man or a good wife by fulfilling all of those responsibilities as parents, mothers, fathers, while still trying to maintain the responsibility of how we need to take care of our own parents, while managing jobs, managing bills. How the hell are we ever supposed to really survive through that when we've had no education in understanding our own minds? So if you're feeling suicidal right now, it's normal, it's understandable, it's to be expected. At the bottom of the link on this video, I'm going to put about 5 or 6 different charities that directly deal with people going through suicidal feelings and thoughts. I urge you to pick up the phone. And just like riding that bike, if you're speaking to somebody on the phone that you don't connect with, let them know that you're grateful that they took the time, but say, I want to speak to somebody else. You have the right to do that. You have the right to find that somebody that you connect with. I guarantee that relationship is exactly what is needed right now. And the understanding, the education and the awareness that you gain through that relationship is exactly what is needed for you to transcend these suicidal feelings and thoughts. You cannot transcend it with the same old behaviours that have got you trapped in it. So, take a breath. You are okay. You will get through this. Look for the right support. Let people know how you're feeling. Let the right people know how you're feeling. And God bless everybody. Thank you everybody for tuning in.